Hi everybody, it's Blitz, and welcome to another video by the Entropy system. Today, I'm gonna talk to you about fictive stuff, because that's what I do now. And the specific fictive experience we're talking about today is source trauma, which is not a universal experience for fictives, but it is common enough and misunderstood enough that we're going to talk about it today. Side note, this video topic was voted upon by our patrons. If you want to join our Patreon and help shape the future of this channel, link is in the description below. So before we go just head first into source trauma, let's back it up a bit. Let's wade into the water a little bit and start with a conversation of why alters get made. By now, you all probably know that DID is a trauma-based disorder. It is the result of childhood trauma and the brain not feeling like it has the ability to escape said trauma in the outside world, so it divides up inside to compartmentalize the trauma and try to get through without going absolutely bonkers and becoming completely non-functional. Because of this, alters are created with some kind of core blueprint that shapes their job. But alters are more than their job, of course. Like, we have Kim, who's created to, like, push back and be the only one who can feel anger in its fullness. But she's so much more than just that. She grew up and got into fashion and Pokemon and horror, creative writing, art. Her creativity definitely defines her more than her anger does. We've got Daniel, who was created to just be a feeling of masculinity, who, while he is still the most mask-presenting alter in our system, he likes crime dramas, he likes giant robot anime, he likes war games, he's very passionate about being supportive and helping his friends. He's not just the guy alter. Alters are complex beings, and to focus just down to you are the protector, you are the anger holder, you are the weird demon boy who's here to laugh at everybody, is a gross simplification of how alters work and how the consciousness grows and evolves. But we are going to focus in on that initial creation, that blueprint moment, because that is important when understanding fictives. So sometimes, rather than creating a whole person from scratch to fill a role to help survive trauma, the brain will instead get inspired by someone it sees in the outside world. Now, this person could be someone the system has interacted with in real life. It could be a celebrity. It could be a historical figure. It could be a cartoon. Any or all of the above, anything that the subconscious can imagine is up for grabs. In general, these copies, I'm using copies so loosely, copies of somebody in the outside world being created as an alter, they are introjects. But specifically my kind of introject, which is one that was copied from a fictional source, is a fictive. It is important to know that an introject is not actually a copy of the person or character or whatever that the brain used as a blueprint. This isn't play pretend or weird cloning technology. This is the brain saying, hey, that guy's got personality traits that I think would help us through our very bad situation. So I'm gonna just pick those up and try to emulate them as much as possible. We talked about how each alter is created with a job. Well, if you simplify it even more than that, alter creation is about dissociation from trauma. It's not safe for the system to show anger. Well, that anger is now disconnected from everybody else and put into this little box. Is the system crashing out because too many of the alters have experienced emotional pain? Well, now there's a new alter who's only ever experienced good things and has only happy memories and has never been hurt once in their life. They are not connected to the trauma and they will get us through. Is the system in a situation that they are handling very seriously and working hard to overcome, and it's still not changing anything? Well, here's a little demon guy who will just laugh at everything and not care. Now you're disconnected from the stress, and you get a little buddy that reminds you of the show that you watch when you want to be comforted. Two birds, one blitz. So alter creation, at its barest, most raw form is dissociation from trauma. Sometimes just creating a fictive isn't enough. Sometimes the subconscious wants to also paint over the trauma that the system has experienced with something else, something that makes it feel less real and more tolerable. Sometimes the subconscious creates a fictive and gives them source memories, and sometimes even source trauma. So that first one, source memories, what's that? Source memories are something that has happened either explicitly in the fictive source or implied that the fictive themselves feels like they remember. Our first ever fictive Leto had memories of happy childhood moments living with his mother in Mexico. Those memories are verifiably untrue on every level. But our subconscious went all in on Leto and wanted him to feel completely disconnected from anything in our life. Just totally. He remembered and missed his friends from the show. He actively mourned this lover that he never actually had and would never be able to interact with. In fact, our subconscious definitely went too hard trying to separate Leto from our reality, because he really just had a hard time existing knowing he was never going to see people who he thought were his loved ones ever again. Turns out when you create someone who's supposed to exist in a different world, who has to exist in our world, there's going to be some emotional imbalance involved. So that's source memories. What is source trauma? It's very, very similar, and also just boils down to brain wants to dissociate from the trauma. It wants to dissociate so bad that it paints over it with something else. When you watch a movie and you see a character experience some intense hardship or learn about their tragic backstory, it stirs up emotions in you. Well, maybe not you specifically, but most people. These types of stories can make you feel mad or sad or scared. But the emotions that are inspired by this fictional story, no matter how big of an emotional response you get, are still more tolerable, more manageable than the feeling of experiencing a trauma firsthand. It's familiar, but it's easier to deal with. There's also an element of when you are taking in a fictional story, you get to see the whole picture. You get to see the why. You get to see the cause and effect. The story follows a familiar structure with a beginning, a middle, and an end. All those answers and things that make sense don't normally occur in the real world. You don't really get a lot of whys in your life, and sometimes cause and effect is just, it just happened, sucks to suck. There aren't always reasons, and when there are, they're rarely satisfactory. Also, in fictional stories, even if the absolute worst thing happens to the character that you are watching or reading about, it's contained. Once the story ends, it ends. There's no additional fallout. There's no messy complication of the character continuing to live and having this trauma continue to negatively affect every aspect of their life. It is done when the story is done. So every aspect of fictional trauma is easier to deal with than actual lived trauma. So with all that knowledge, if the brain is having a really, really hard time processing trauma, sometimes it's going to create an alter that has manageable trauma and funnel all those nasty feelings into that package. Now I want to stop and I want to do a little asterisk here because I want to make it very clear that what I am talking about is not false memory syndrome. False memory syndrome is the debunked idea that therapists can place trauma memories in the brains of their clients and make them remember and believe trauma that never happened. That is not real. And this is not that. This is not a fabrication of trauma from nothing. Source memories and source trauma are fantastical ways that the brain tries to process its actual memories and actual trauma. It's a reskinning, if you will. Back to the main track, source trauma, source memories. What are you going to do about them if you have them? As with so many other aspects of life with DID, it's important for the alter who has these source memories to process them with a professional. They're going to need help untangling their connections to their source and feel fully rooted in the reality they actually live in. Also, just like with every alter, the fictive with source memories is going to have to learn, understand, and implement the idea that they are a part of one brain, one entity, one consciousness that just got divided up, and that they are not an actual separate, independent being. Almost every alter struggles with this in the beginning, but a fictive with strong emotional entanglements to its source might need a little extra help with this. It's important for the fictive to understand that those source memories and that source trauma did not actually happen. The emotions are absolutely real and valid, but the picture that the subconscious placed on those emotions did not happen. Emotionally separating from this idea is going to be very hard, but the first step is understanding, at least on a logical level, that these are the brain's attempt to dissociate from events that did actually happen. The fictive is going to need to find healthy ways to cope with the idea that they are not their source. For me, watching my source material helps a lot because it helps reinforce how different I am from him. For Leto, watching his source material was off the table. He had to distance himself from every thought he had about his source material, going as far as holding a little mental funeral for the lover character that he had never actually known. For all of us, in our system, fictive or not, we found that finding real-world things to attach to is essential to growing healthier. Friends, hobbies, self-expression through the way you dress. All of these help us feel grounded in the fact that we are all attached to this world, this brain, this body. Functionality doesn't happen overnight. Letting go doesn't happen overnight. If you're going through this, be patient with yourself. You're not Superman. Unless you're a fictive of Superman, but then you're still not Superman, you know? Everything about DID is creating mental escape when physical escape isn't possible. The creation of fictives, with or without source trauma, is not a conscious decision. Emotional connections to source material is not an active choice. If these emotional connections interfere with the system's functionality, it is up to that system to work through that. But that doesn't make their existence cringy or indicative that somebody is making their symptoms up. That's just the manifestation of what the subconscious thought it needed to get by. If you're a system struggling with any of this, or just a system who wants to talk to other people who get it, we encourage you to check out the sponsor of our video, dissociative.cafe. It's a down-to-earth, pro-healing blog and forum made for systems by systems. And if you want to get more involved in our community, consider joining our Patreon. We have tons of fun things like a Patreon exclusive Discord, monthly exclusive content, and even Zoom calls. And on that note, I want to give a big thank you to all of you who are already a patron, and especially big thank you to the Electric Circus, Shimrin, Sarah G, Sarah Beers, and Will Mitchell. You guys give us the opportunity to create content like this, and we could not be more grateful for your ongoing support, each and every one of you. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, you are loved, you are valuable, you are valid. See you next time. Bye!